Hey guys, this is Jordan, and I wanted to share some pretty difficult news with you before you tune in to hear the interview that I had with Mac Lake. Ever since I started this podcast, one of my top goals was to have Mac on the show. And I was so grateful that we finally made it happen after months of planning and scheduling. Our conversation was absolutely outstanding. Mac was super transparent on things that are happening in his world, as well as giving so much leadership advice, as well as just everyday insights to how people can be effective in using their time and talents. I was beyond excited to bring that interview to you. However, I'm devastated to report that something went wrong during that recording process, and we lost a majority of the audio in our interview. We only have about 10 minutes of an hour-long interview in regards to the start. I've tried everything possible to recover the file, but nothing has worked. I've even lost sleep over it. I prayed and I asked the Lord that He would miraculously somehow make that file reoccur. But in my prayers, the Lord keeps telling me no. And that's okay. It hurts so much to know that you won't be able to hear this entire conversation. But I'm trusting in God's faithfulness through it all, and I know that good will come out of it. I asked all my guests to share a time when they failed and what they learned from it, and this is one of those moments for me. It's a true failure that I have to accept, but for right now, it's tough, as failure is a hard lesson to learn. Mac and I's conversation, we talked about failure and the fact that it happens, and those feelings, while tough, we have to accept and realize that there's lessons to be learned from them. So I'm so sorry that I won't be able to share this interview with you in its entirety, but I do want to give you the 10 minutes that we do have at the beginning. You can listen to that interview right after I'm done with this explanation, as well as some links to the things that we discussed in our time at the bottom of whatever podcast platform that you're choosing to participate in. I'm not sure if I'll ever be able to interview Mac again. His schedule is pretty tight, and he is very selective in what he chooses to participate in. I was ecstatic that he took the time to spend with me, and I'll cherish everything that was discussed. So I would encourage you to check out his work at the Multiply Group. He's generously provided our listeners with a 10% discount on his books and resources using the code FAMOUSFRIENDS at checkout. You can also download a free ebook, Rethinking Leadership Development, at themultiplygroup.org. I want to thank you guys so much, first of all, for listening, but also for understanding and sticking with me through this. I'm so grateful for each one of you who continues to listen and to participate, and I hope you still find value in the content that we were able to save and the resources that are in the description. There are more interviews and more opportunities for us moving forward. We'll use this as a learning moment for sure as we continue to move forward. God bless. Hey, well, good morning, good afternoon, or maybe it's even good evening for you, depending on when you are punching in. Welcome to another episode of Jordan's Famous Friends. I am Jordan, and today I have the pleasure of sitting down with my good friend, Mac Lake, who I've known for a while. We are what I call long-distance friends. I send him a text message, and he sends back thank you. So that's kind of how our relationship works, but I admired Mac for a long time. He is a coach and does a lot of things in regards to a lot of different fields, and we're going to kind of let him weigh in on that. But Mac Lake, man, thanks for joining me today.
Oh man, it's so good to be with you today, and thrilled to connect with you again. In not in person, but via. Yes, yes.
It's been what? How long since we were in person together? You think? Probably 8 maybe years ago, something like that.
I would say about 8 years. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and you made the grave mistake of giving me your phone number, and I just text you all the time. I text you once a month, and you're like,
Oh,
hey.
love your monthly texts because they are so encouraging. They're so uplifting and challenging. And here's the thing, I get texts from guys like that on occasion, and but yours are always so encouraging and authentic, and I love it. I love hearing from you.
Appreciate that, man. Hey, well, I don't give like a whole lot of explanation behind guests because a couple reasons. Number one, it sounds like I'm reading your obituary. I don't want to do that. I let the guest give essentially what we call a cliff note version of their life. So there's certain achievements that we've had in our life. Take us back, start at the beginning where you were born and all that other stuff, but give us like the cliff note version of how you got to where you're at right now, those pivotal moments or decisions that shaped you to the current situation that you find yourself in.
Okay, so like 63 years in 63 seconds type of thing.
65, 66, 67. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born and raised in a little town of 500 in West Virginia. Gave my life to Christ at 9 years old. Mom and dad were just dedicated believers. And so I had the privilege of seeing a healthy marriage, healthy Christian walk. And so that attracted me. And so, I grew up in that environment and gave my life to Christ at 9. And then by the time I was 13, I was very passionate about my faith, but I was very shy. And so basically, I would come home from school, I'd go down in my basement, read some of my dad's books. I'd go out and shoot basketball, but I was very shy. It was hard for me to be around people. And then my senior year of high school, I don't know what happened. I can't wait to get to heaven and ask about it. But there was a transformation in my personality where all of a sudden I became outgoing and felt a call to ministry at that point. So that's when I went to Moody Bible Institute and got my education there. And then I moved to Charleston, South Carolina, and got into real estate. Got into a short stint of youth ministry, and then God called me. I got married here. Met my wife Cindy. Got married here. Went off to Dallas Theological Seminary. Got my education there, and after that is when we began our ministry journey. And started out as an associate pastor in Pawleys Island, where I was responsible for all kinds of things. So I got so many reps at different ministries and different leadership roles. And then God called us to plant a church in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So we planted and thought I was going to do that my whole life. But there was a guy who sort of prophesied over me, and he said, "You're not going to be at that church forever. God is putting you in that position so that you can have influence on church planting nationally." I thought he was crazy. I'd not even planted a church. I wasn't thinking about a larger influence. I was just nuts. I just wanted to plant that church, pastor it my whole life. And 7 years into it, I ended up in a lunch. Greg Surratt, who pastors at Seacoast Church, a large multi-site church, and he ended up calling me there to help oversee multi-site. And then, Jordan, from there, a guy called me and we started a church planting network. And then, crazy enough, that was adopted by the North American Mission Board, which is the largest church planting organization in the world. And that was, goodness gracious, 12 years ago or so. And they continue to use that system. And then 5 years ago, I left there and started my own company called the Multiply Group, helping organizations, not just churches, but organizations develop better leaders and leadership development system.
So, with all that said, which is, you know, a long list of different places, you've been to different communities, you're involved with different people, it doesn't matter if it's, the secular world or you're involved with church. A lot of times what happens is books play these profound impacts from in our life. So we will read something and it will shift us into a different direction. What are the books or the authors that have significantly influenced you or played a role in shaping your perspective along that path that you just talked about?
Yeah. Jordan, I remember years ago sitting in my library at home, sitting on the couch facing a giant wall bookshelf. And I sat there and literally was in tears, thanking God. I was pointing at different books and thanking God for different authors and different books, because books have shaped me so significantly. In my younger years, I would read 52 books a year for years and years. And so now what I do is I read in four categories. Spiritual life. Um, and so every year I pick books that can help me grow spiritually. The book that shaped me the most in my memory is Ordering Your Private World by Gordon MacDonald.
Hmm.
Had profound impact in my young years. So I read in spiritual life, I read in leadership, and the book that has most shaped me more than any other around my leadership is Ken Blanchard's 1 Minute Manager and Leadership and the 1 Minute Manager, two different books. And so those had a profound impact on my leadership. I read in the third area is health, and Sean Stevenson's books have had a huge impact on my life. The one he wrote that's one of my favorite books is called Sleep Smarter: 21 Strategies for Sleeping Smarter. And it's not just a book about sleeping; it's a book about productivity. It's a phenomenal, phenomenal book that shaped me deeply. And then the last area is business, because I run a business now. So I read business books, and the one that shaped me there is Don Miller's How to Grow Your Small Business.
Hmm. Um, it's funny that you brought up Sleep Smarter, because so many sleep books people will bypass because they look at those sleep books and they go, they're just talking about sleep. There's so much more in those pages if people would just pick it up.
Oh, absolutely.
It's almost like they're marketed wrong, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy to me because there's some that I've read and I'm like, this is not a sleep book. This is a book on how to be affected. Sometimes we hit on podcasts. You have certain podcasts that you go to in those categories, or no?
No. Well, I mean, yeah, I guess so. Yeah. Don Miller's podcast, Sean Stevenson's podcast, I've been listening to for nearly the beginning. So I would say I've listened to his podcast for 8 years, and I would call him my physical nutrition health mentor.
Hmm.
Never met him, but he's definitely shaped my view of fitness and nutrition more than anybody.
Yeah, for real. When you look past books, right? Because books are important. We have shelves full of them, 52 books a year, which is pretty audacious, my friend, which is fantastic. But we're interested too in the little things that make a difference beyond that. Share with us a purchase or an investment you've made recently that's had a surprisingly positive impact in your life. Could be product, service, experience, something that made a difference.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's recent, but it's the purchase that has shaped me more than anything. And it was a pivotal moment in my life. And so I was associate pastor at Polly's Island Baptist, and I knew that I wasn't the best leader I could be. And so I went to a John Maxwell conference, and at the Maxwell conference, he talked about personal growth. And he said, I've got a personal growth kit. It's 100 of my audio tapes, 12 of my favorite leadership books, and a 365-day leadership journal. And it was $500, back then in 1990,